A buried voice note surfaces, two relatives trading accusations, not over money but legacy. One side claims betrayal, the other insists survival. When family warfare turns public, secrets don't leak, they explode. Today, we unpack the hidden layers behind the Macele versus Maybe I feud. Loyalty versus ambition, tradition versus modern power plays, and the shocking catalyst nobody saw coming. Stay to the end. The real twist isn't who started the fire, but who kept feeding it understood. Below are the *** first 8 narrative blocks only, no takeaways **, no CTA, no wrap. Just pure story flow. It always starts quietly, a whisper, a glance, a half-sentence taken the wrong way. In this family, the spark wasn't a public announcement. It was a murmured comment about loyalty, spoken in the wrong kitchen, carried by a cousin who enjoyed drama more than peace. One side heard, "They think they're better than us." The other heard, "Watch them, they want everything." Little misunderstandings grow teeth when pride is involved. And soon, what was once a family became two camps, sharpening words like knives. Every feud has a moment where someone says, "I had no choice." In this story, that moment came when a key decision was made without second consultation, a move justified as protecting the family interests. But for the other side, it felt like betrayal dressed in good intention. One saw duty, the other saw defiance. That's the dangerous part about family loyalty. The line between protecting and abandoning is paper-thin. You don't always know you've crossed it until faces change and voices grow colder. Family fights rarely stay inside family walls. Suddenly, there were advisors, friends, confidants, even church voices whispering strategic thoughts disguised as concern. Don't let them walk over you. Think for yourself. They're planning without you, act first. Outsiders don't need to pull strings to be influential. They just need to plant doubt and watch it grow. And doubt grew fast here. What could have been a private conversation morphed into a battlefield shaped by external egos and quiet manipulation. No one openly mentioned money at first, they rarely do. But power moves often hide financial shadows. Decisions about assets, future plans, and who would represent the family's interests sparked quiet resentment. Pride entered the chat. "Pride is subtle," it says. "I deserve a seat, and do you think I'm beneath you?" The issue wasn't just wealth. It was recognition, status, and the right to speak without seeking permission. Respect once given freely suddenly felt rationed. One side saw duty to heritage, to continue things as they've always been done. The other believed evolution was necessary. We can't stay in the past just to look respectful. Tradition isn't just culture. It's identity. But independence feels like breathing fresh air after years in one room. Conflict becomes inevitable when one person moves forward and another stands guard at history's door. Neither wants to be wrong, and both fear losing themselves in compromise. From the outside, the family looked unbreakable, united, dignified, smiling at public events. But behind closed doors, words hit harder than fists ever could. People online speculated, invented theories, chose sides without knowing the first truth. Family pain became social entertainment. And once strangers enter your business, pride makes you perform instead of heal. Both sides started protecting their image more than their peace, and the feud sharpened because embarrassment is fuel in emotional wars. Legacy isn't just about land or reputation, it's emotional currency. And once feelings become collateral, there are no clean wins. Nights turned sleepless. Messages went unread. Family gatherings became tense strategic spaces instead of safe homes. People who once laughed together now monitored each other's tone, each pause, each silence. Legacy fights don't just divide, they hollow. They make you question if blood is thicker than ambition, or if ambition quietly eats the bloodline first. In every conflict, one voice gets louder and one gets quieter. Silence, though, is never neutral. It's armor, it's strategy, it's control. One side spoke out, venting pain, defending position. The other chose silence, calculating, waiting, letting tension do the speaking. People thought that meant weakness. But silence can be a force. It forces the opposition to fill the space with assumptions and fear. And just like that, the feud entered a psychological stage where talking wasn't communication, it was ammunition. When tempers rise, loyalty becomes a battlefield test, not a family bond. People began choosing sides in whispers. A cousin leaning left, an aunt leaning right, siblings suddenly careful with their words. Loyalty isn't loud. It shifts in tiny movements, in who gets called first, in who receives information, and who hears it secondhand. What once felt like a united foundation now cracked beneath the weight of whispered alliances and quiet doubts. Every war has a moment that changes its temperature. Here, it wasn't a shouting match, it was a single moment of withheld help. One side expected support during a vulnerable time, and when it didn't arrive, trust crumbled. That absence spoke louder than accusations ever could. That's when disappointment hardened into resentment and hurt transformed into a mission. A feud truly begins not when people fight, but when they stop caring to understand. There comes a point in conflict where empathy fades and ego stands alone. One family member thought, "They owe me an apology." The other thought, "Why should I bend first?" Pride sat at the table, refusing to leave. Ego builds walls, empathy builds bridges, but in this moment, nobody wanted to cross. Even small gestures felt like surrender. And when nobody wants to appear weak, softness becomes rare and misunderstanding grows teeth. Not all battles are internal. Friends, business partners, social voices, they added fuel under the guise of support. Don't give in. You're in the right. Validation became armor, encouragement became gasoline. Sometimes it isn't enemies who spread conflict, it's supporters who misread pain as pride and turn loyalty into a weapon. Soon, private hurt became public positioning, amplified by people who didn't feel the emotional cost, only the excitement of taking sides. Screenshots surfaced, hints dropped online. A post that seemed innocent suddenly felt like a strike disguised as inspiration. The internet doesn't forget, and it certainly doesn't stay quiet. Followers speculated, bloggers created narratives, and private wounds became public conversation. The feud was no longer between two people. It became a storyline outsiders felt entitled to complete. The digital era makes family wounds broadcast material, and once the crowd is watching, retreat feels like defeat. People don't forget what was said in anger, or what wasn't said when comfort was needed. Old arguments resurfaced, old hurts were replayed like archived evidence. Remember when you didn't show up? Remember when you embarrassed me? Emotional receipts don't expire in family wars, they accumulate interest. Soon, past disappointments blended with present ego, and the conflict stopped being about one moment. It became about every bruise left unspoken. There were attempts to fix things, quiet check-ins, mutual relatives reaching out, conversations framed as clearing the air. But peace is impossible when trust is fractured and motives are questioned. Even kind gestures were seen as strategic moves, not sincere effort. It's hard to reconcile when nobody believes the olive branch isn't hiding a thorn. So talks faded, bridges stayed half-built, and silence returned, heavier this time. As time passed, the damage settled like dust after a storm. People moved differently, with caution, with guarded tones. The family dynamic reshaped itself. Some bonds tightened in the war. Others dissolved without drama, just quiet distance. Feuds don't always explode. Sometimes they quietly redraw the map of who sits where, who calls who still trusts who. And once those lines are drawn, returning to normal feels impossible. Every feud leaves shadows behind, not on the battlefield, but around it. Relatives who never chose sides still felt the chill. Children noticed the shift in tone. Elders carried quiet disappointment, watching unity slip through fingers like water. Friends stopped asking questions because answers felt heavy. The hurt didn't just belong to the two at war, it seeped into rooms they weren't in, conversations they never heard, hearts they didn't mean to bruise. Conflict doesn't stay where it starts. It spreads quietly like smoke under a door. Sometimes the loudest victims never speak at all. Eventually, the storm settles, not because wounds healed, but because exhaustion won. What was once a shared path split into parallel lives. Two people who grew from the same story now walk different chapters, carrying memories like stones. Pride protected them, but it also isolated them. And over time, the family name remained, but the unity beneath it shifted. Legacy didn't break, it simply changed shape, molded by silence, pride, and moments that could never be undone. Some endings don't announce themselves. They just arrive. In the end, this wasn't just a fight between two relatives. It was a slow unraveling of history, trust, and unspoken expectations. A reminder that families aren't broken in one moment, They fracture in whispers, in assumptions, in silences that grow too long. There are no villains here, only humans pulled between love and pride, loyalty and independence, tradition and selfhood. Two names, one legacy, now divided not by force, but by emotion, ego, and time. This story doesn't finish with victory, only adjustment. Distance becomes peace when reconciliation feels impossible, and life moves forward, differently, but still moving.